Kathy out here in Singapore, and thank you so much for joining me on the Night Out podcast. You guys, I am loving Bridgerton, the newest Netflix series at the moment, and it's set in periodic England where they're talking about lords and duchesses and dukes and, gosh, barons, viscounts, all that stuff. I love it. But I love this period mostly because it is very, very apparent the kinds of cultural differences that we had back then versus now, and some things that still have not changed to this day. And so I'm able to draw a lot of, similarities between our two worlds, the present day 2020 with all of the information and, connectivity that we have going on versus back then where there was decorum, there were rules, there was a specific way that you behaved inside your home, outside your home, with people, without people, all of that. I love it. I love it so much. So this time I'm actually thinking about, Daphne and Simon's relationship. So I'm at the part right now where they're discussing the fact that Simon actually made a vow to his father on his deathbed, saying that he would not sire an heir to the Hastings line. He was so upset with the way his father treated him and the way that he treated his mother and how obsessed he was with, continuing the line of the Hastings family and the dukedom, that he had made a vow on his deathbed. But this was all in between the time that he had finally met Daphne. They had started their ruse to kind of con everybody, and he was slowly starting to fall in love. So I want to talk to you about promises and broken promises, mostly because sometimes you don't have all the information, and sometimes you have no idea how one old promise that you make may be affecting a new promise that you make. So they were actually talking about the fact that, there was one vow to not sire an heir, and there was another vow made when they got married to be true and start a family, all that stuff. So there was a line specifically that Daphne said that really kind of like hung in the air for me. She said, "We will know in a couple of days which vow you broke, and then we will decide how we are to live our lives, whether we'll be miserable together or happy apart." And I think that actually is still something that's relevant to this day, because there are so many married couples that I know of who are just miserable together. And then there are so many people who are married, but they are living separate lives and they're happy that way. They found their happiness, but they're still kind of doing a disservice to the vow they made when they married each other. So I wanted to think about that a little bit, mostly because sometimes you make promises before you have new information. Sometimes you make a vow when you're a child, right? And you carry that vow with you as you grow older. Like for me, as silly as it sounds, I swore up and down I would never be like my parents, the way that they raised us. I didn't want to beat my children. I didn't want to, scare them into submission. I didn't want them to just obey me and not have a mind of their own. I wanted my child to think. I wanted them to be able to survive in the world after I was gone. So I made a list of rules how I was going to raise my child. And there was also, this is so embarrassing, there was also a part of me when I was growing up that I thought, you know what? You guys picked on me when I was little and weak and I couldn't do anything about it. You beat me, you put me down, you shamed me in front of people. And there was a vow that I swore back then that, you know what? Wait till you get older and I will do the same to you. But obviously now I think, okay, I did make a vow and I didn't promise, my firstborn child or anything, but it was a promise I made to myself, which I have now broken. But I'm okay with having broken it because I know now that that doesn't serve a good purpose. It doesn't make me any better than them when they were my age, or my age now. It doesn't prove that, I'm better or stronger than they are. It doesn't make a difference because the damage is already done. If I were to now go exact my revenge and treat them the way they treated me, I am showing my child, who would most certainly be watching my behavior, that revenge is okay. And more than that, I don't think I'd get any satisfaction from seeing them hurt, because now it's a reflection of my character and the fact that I could have made a different choice. So back to the vows, right? Got sidetracked for a second. Back to the vows. I made a vow that I was going to change the way that parenting is done in my family, because I would change. I would be different. And then, of course, I had this revenge vow. But like I said, I was okay with breaking that promise about treating my parents the way they treated me, because I learned different. So once there was the introduction of new information, I made the choice for myself that no harm, no foul. I'm not actually losing anything by breaking a promise that I made to myself right? Because I never had the guts to go tell my parents that I was going to treat them. Just you wait till you're old. I'm going to do it to you. I didn't say that. So I didn't have anything to lose by breaking a promise with me. I mean, let's face it, I break promises with myself all the time. There have been so many times when I was in a love relationship that I thought, with the end of this one, I'm never doing that again. Well, guess what? I did it again. So anyway, I was okay with breaking the promise to myself because I had new information and it meant something different to me. The way I saw the world was different at that point. I realized that to stoop as low as my parents were back then, because obviously they didn't do any better, they did what their parents did, right? I understand that now, all this generational curses and shit. For me to stoop to that level makes me just as bad as they are, which means I haven't learned my lesson and I have not taught them anything, because at that point, what can they learn? They're old, right? So the best thing I can do is exact my revenge by showing them that I can progress, that I can evolve, that I can be better than they were back then, and not rub their faces in it by any means, but the satisfaction would be for me to say, hey, you did this way and you told me that this was the only way that it could be done, and here I am doing it different and it's still working. I'm okay. I'm not screwing anybody over. I'm not destroying anything. I am doing okay. Now, when it comes to back to Daphne and Simon, he made a vow to his father on his deathbed. Yes, but the father on the deathbed means the man is no longer alive, right? And in my humble opinion, if he were to sire an heir, he has the choice on how the lineage moves forward. He could make it so the lineage was the most important thing in his life and it ruled his life too, just like it did his father's, by completing that vow, or because he now has happiness, because there is a glimmer of possibility for him, he could abandon that vow, right, which now it's between him and his dead father, and continue to fulfill the vow that he made to his wife in order to save her dignity and her family name, right, and start a new bright future. But this is the thing. It's very, very reminiscent of times now, because how many times have we made a promise about something, right? And only to have it rule over every other decision we are to make in our lives. And that's not actually fair, and it's not actually productive by any means. I remember when I really thought that the only way to really get success, because it was handed down to me, this idea was handed down to me, was to go through school, get a degree, get married, get a job, start a family. That was the route to happiness. And here I am standing in the way of that, because I'm happy now more than I was when I had fulfilled those steps. And if I had just followed my heart, I would have been happy, 20 years ago, and it would be a different life. But the point being that at the time, the belief was so strong that it overshadowed any other possibility for happiness. Any other path that might have led me to happiness was not even visible to my naked eye, because I was so hell-bent on doing it the way that I was told to do it. Because of course I wanted my parents' approval. Of course I wanted to be accepted by society. I wanted nothing I didn't want anyone to say anything about me. I didn't want anyone to have any reason to talk shit about me because I did it the right way. Or so I thought. But now, I'm older, wiser a little bit, I think, and I realize there is no right way. There is the right way for me, and there is the right way for you. And a lot of it comes down to trial and error. What I think might be right today may not be right next week. What I think is the best strategy for social media today may be the worst possible strategy for social media next year, or not even next year, maybe next month, because the algorithm changed, or they added some new feature that, kind of fucks with everything you were thinking in the first place. So if life is ever changing, why is it some of us cling to the promises that we've made, even after new information has been introduced to us? Maybe at the time when he, had resigned himself to the fact that he was going to vow never to continue the Hastings line, it was because he had given up all hope of finding someone intellectually stimulating enough to even consider having a family with. But after that happened, it would have been between him and his God about the vow that he made. And honestly speaking, at the duel when he told Daphne that, he could not have children, he could have very easily, because, no one else knew about that. Daphne's brother Anthony had no idea about the deal that he'd made with Daphne. But in the face of that possibility, she said yes. So if he had said, look, I don't want to have any children because I promised my father I would not, to spite him, then she would at least have that information to consider before she took her decision and decided to marry him. For a man that was hell-bent on not being married and everybody knew it, he turned around and got married. Wasn't that also a vow that he made? So I'm confused. When is it okay to break a promise and when is it not? And when is it that we open our eyes and realize that we are cutting our nose off to spite our face and not being as noble as we think we are? When do we get that mirror held up to our faces? And it's usually in the form of somebody else and their sarcasm or their acid tongue that shows us, oh my God, the error of my ways. But usually our pride will get in the way and tell them that they are completely wrong and way off base and shut the fuck up, leave me alone. But like I said, a lot of times the best way for us to learn to be honest is for someone to hold up a mirror and show us exactly how much of a mess we are. Hopefully it's lovingly, like I'm very, very impressed that Daphne did in this scene. And yes, this is a complete spoiler alert, but I love talking about human relations. I could talk about it all day long. I could, discuss all the very crazy options and ways that this could play out. But that's the fun of it all. I get a different perspective by watching how these people created the character, how the character evolves throughout the story. And I am very proud of the young woman that Daphne is, considering the time that she was living. And I'm actually very proud of the man that Simon is, because he didn't have to open up the way that he did. He did not have to come forward and tell Daphne anything, but he did. And I wish for people to be that brutally honest, maybe not brutally, but that honest with each other so that people have the best possible chance to make a good decision because they have all the facts. Now, it would have been very easy for Simon to tell Anthony exactly what was going on, but no, he let Anthony dig at him and poke the bear and upset him to no end. But he was able to tell his wife. And honestly, I could only wish for a relationship where my husband thinks enough of me to come to me with his problems, and I think enough of him to come to him with my problems, so that between the two of us we can figure out how to fix it before we let the rest of the world in. And I would love to have a brother like Anthony want to step in and be, speak on my behalf, or at least try to get some information, considering, Anthony and Simon were best friends. I think it's really important to have a close circle of friends around your relationship, people that both you and your husband trust. And then, of course, a circle of friends where it's just your friends and then it's just his friends. But the point being that you have a very, very tight-knit inner circle of people both of you trust, so that they can tell you, hey, when you're being unreasonable, when you're, jumping to conclusions, where you're not asking the right questions, where they could ask for you perhaps because maybe it's too delicate an issue for you to ask directly. But at least you have a third party. You have somebody that could step in for you and help you out, because I think it's a necessary thing to have support for a marriage, not just within the marriage, but just outside of it as well. So I am curious about how you feel about promises and broken promises, and when is it okay to break a promise, and when is it okay to amend your promise perhaps? Because I feel like sometimes when we promise these things, it has the potential to dictate the rest of your life. And what are you willing to really sacrifice? I think it was really a big question that Daphne posed when she said, well, we'll see which one is more important to you, to spite your father or to love your wife. To prove to your father that he was an asshole and he should not have anything to continue his name, or to spite your wife when you have happiness sitting right at your doorstep waiting for you to embrace it, only to turn it away because the other one is more important. This was a really big big piece of intuition and new piece of information for Simon to consider, and I would be very excited to find out what he does next. But yeah, this is something we deal with on a daily basis here as well. Which is more important, to prove that you are right or to protect what you love most? So many times it happens in our own lives, right? Do I need to put you down in order to say that I win, I'm right, I told you so? Or is it more important for you to know that you were right, and for the other person to realize, okay, yeah, maybe they were right, but I'm not going to rub your face in it. I'm going to respect the fact that you tried it your way, it didn't quite work, and maybe perhaps going forward you might trust me, or at least consider me when you're trying to make a decision, and I can maybe give you my 2 cents. So, broken promises, let me know how you feel. Is it okay to change them? Is it okay to break them with yourself? Because we do them for all other kinds of reasons anyway. Just curious. Let me know what you think. Bye.